Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's of seminars. My name is Liang. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers, Dr. Che Zike. Dr. Che received his Ph.D. degrees in computer science from University of California at Berkeley in 1992. Since then, Dr. Che has held different prominent positions, including the architecture chief of the Symantec Technologies from 2007 to 2009. Currently, Dr. Che is the Vice President and the General Director of Information and Communication Research Laboratories, and as well as the Director of Cloud Computing Centers for Mobile Applications in ITRIS. And he's also served as the General Secretary of Cloud Computing Association in Taiwan, and he still holds professorship in University of New York at Stony Brook. 我们非常感激今天这个工研院资通所的阙之客阙所长能够在今年的最后一天来到我们这里跟他分享他的各种研究方面的经验这样子。我想今天阙所长在演讲的过程之中英文为主中文为辅，为中英夹杂。那如果同学们有问题，是不是随时都可以问，还是阙所长是随时都可以问啊？Dr. Che will conduct his speech in English mainly, but from time to time that he will use Chinese when approaching the key concepts. And please join me to give Dr. Che a big hand. Thank you.
Everyone for a kind introduction. So what I'm going to talk about today is this particular title. So just in case this is the correct English. So price is a noun here. So what price PhD means that what is the price you are willing to pay to get a PhD? Right? It's a special expression, but that's what it means, right? So what I'm going to talk about today is really like if you are going to go through PhD, you have to go through certain set of hurdles to go through a PhD. In the process, what exactly do you gain? Now, this is a popular topic among professors in Taiwan because as we know that the number of students that are interested in enrolling in the PhD program is decreasing. Now, most students do not really know what's going on. Why do I want to get a PhD? I'm hoping that I can convince you that there's indeed a value to get a PhD. Now, if the professor tells you so, you probably don't believe them. But people like me, I'm more or less in the industry, so hopefully I'm a little bit more convincing than your professors. So, first of all, I want to set the context sort of clear, that I'm not the kind of guy that says that everybody should get a PhD. Those days are gone, right? Those days are gone. Like just because you want to get a better degree or higher degree is automatically a good thing. Those days are gone, right? Like as the Taiwan's economy get improving, we encourage people to go for different paths, career paths. Like if you're good at the art, good at the music, good at the acting, go ahead, knock yourself out. It's not a problem. Just go ahead, do whatever you like to do. Here I'm trying to convince those of you who are thinking about it, doing a PhD. I'm hoping to convince you that there's some value associated with that, right? Or going through a PhD process. Now, in the place that I used to teach, like Stony Brook. Stony Brook is somewhere about like 50 miles from Manhattan, New York City, right? So that's like a New York metropolitan area. Now, kids in New York metropolitan area, those kids who are willing to go through the process of getting an engineering PhD is a very, very rare and weird career choice. Why would you want to do that, right? If you want to make money, go to Wall Street, make money that way. Why do you want to become an engineer and create products and do stuff? That's like a tough sale, and then a lot of math, all those things. It's not a right career choice. So getting a PhD in engineering is almost like getting a PhD in Greek literature. Because this is as weird as a career choice as that, right? and understandably so. If I'm a kid, I live in that environment, I look around, those Wall Street stockbrokers, those are just like a bachelor degree, make tons of money, and you ask me to go through an engineering Ph.D. program to get a degree, and then what? Move to the West Coast. Why? Doesn't make sense, right? So yeah. So in the end, you have to be in this for yourself, that you like to do it, right? So it still boils down to the same thing. You have to be interested in doing it. Then we can talk about why you want to do it, all right? So if you're not interested, you're not interested. So possible motivation for getting PhD, these are possible motivation, right? Maybe you are interested in and really good at research. By now, especially for those of you who are already in the graduate school, you should know what you are made of, whether you are good at it or you are interested in doing it or not. I understand some of you are doing this because of career choice. You think that this will get you an opportunity to get a better job. Nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with that. But still, I'm sure that some of you really think that you are interested in doing it and you think that you are good at it. And then those are the kind of guys that we want to encourage to go through the PhD process. Now, for those of you who are along this line, probably you are trying to accomplish impossible things or break new ground. That's what we are hoping that you aim to do. Or you just want to get a university teaching job. Nowadays, if you don't have a PhD, you're out. You don't have any chance to get a position in any decent sort of university. So that you have to do that if you want to go through this route. Right? And then in that case, you have to impress your advisor, right? And then try to become like the people who are good at publishing. Or you just want to have some work to do a PhD because you think it's a worthwhile investment. Maybe they would move you out in a corporate ladder, right? Down the line, it would help you one way or the other. Now, for those kind of people, typically just do the minimum to get by, right? As long as I can get a degree, they don't really care what kind of degree it is, right? Like I published 10 papers versus published 2 papers. Who cares? In the end, 15 years down the line, PhD is a PhD. It's not like a PhD with 15 papers or a PhD with 2 papers. Doesn't make any difference. But in any case, once you decide that you want to do it, you need to have a sense of purpose and urgency. Right? It's your choice. You make a choice to do it, then you have to have a sense that I want to do it and I want to do it quickly. There's nothing wrong with it. Right? If you are able to graduate really soon, I think your advisor will be proud of you. That I think is a fair game in most cases. All right? Now, I want to talk about the preparation. Right? It's not for everyone, for 2 senses. One is that maybe you are not good at it. So maybe you are not well prepared. So even if you are interested and you are not well prepared, you shouldn't do it. That's the first thing. So my idea is that usually we want people that have sort of absolute enthusiasm in subject area. Now this is a very easy way to test it. So for example, many students come to me and say that, oh, I'm interested in network. But then in the end, if I ask the guy like some small questions about the network, usually they cannot really answer the question very satisfactorily. That indicates to me the guy is not very interested in network. So when we say someone is interested in network, I expect that someone to be interested, to be familiar with all kinds of things about network, just like the guy is interested in music or rock music. He knows what's going on in the rock music community, right? So all kinds of like what's going on, what are the latest pop songs, this and that. They automatically, they would learn those stuff without anybody probing them to do it. And that's what it means for someone to be interested in network. And I expect the same level of interest from them when they are talking about this more academic subject. And the other thing is I'm hoping that people can have like common sense and clear mind. This is difficult to say, but usually when people go through, I'm sure you talk to people who have common sense in other areas. You can say that this guy has common sense. And then in some other areas, then he just knows what's going on there, and then apparently has a sort of like more logical thinking capability and so on. And so we are expecting the same thing in any subject area that you are of your choosing. And the third thing is resourceful. Resourceful in some sense means that you are capable of solving whatever problem that come your way. So for example, like your advisor asks you to set up a PC, install their software, and do this and do that. Some people are very good. Just tell them, and then they can just get it done. And some people cannot get it done, but it's okay. They can ask their friends to get it done, or somehow they have a way to eventually accomplish the task in one way or the other. That's resourceful. And then there are some people who just get stuck, just like that, just get stuck, and then it would take like a couple of months to do it. So that indicates that you are probably not suitable in this particular area. So, yeah, not very resourceful in that particular area. Now, hardworking is a matter of course. Like I said, this is something of your choice. You want to do it, so you need to be hardworking. Smart is to me, smart really means experience and taste. Okay, it's not about IQ. That's not what I meant. Right? When we say somebody is really smart, usually that's what we mean. It means experience and taste. Like it means that, for example, that you present an idea, and I go and poke around some loopholes of that idea, of that algorithm, and then people will say I'm smart. And in the end, it's because I seen a lot of this, so I can think on my feet, and then point out some of the problems of whatever proposal that you happen to propose, that kind of thing. And the most important thing is smart can be learned. So if you do sing things, then you automatically will get smart. So it's not like you automatically have a higher IQ or anything. It's just because you are more experienced. And finally, it's solid. So we all know this, right? So the devil is in the details, right? So like and especially this, like in our business, I guess in computer science as well as in other areas, everybody is compete for the top 10%, right? So we want to be perfect, like absolutely perfect. And we all know that as you do something that is 80% perfect versus you do something that's 90% perfect versus something 95% perfect, it gets more and more expensive to do it. But that's the price you have to pay. So unfortunately, this time of in our time, you only become sort of famous, or you can stand out only when you are in the top 10%. But it's very, very expensive to become top 10% because you have to go that extra mile to get it done. That's just the fact of what we are doing. Anything else is just not worthwhile. That's sort of the competition landscape of our business, that you have to be in the top 10%. Otherwise, anything else is not worthwhile. But in order to be in the top 10%, you have to pay exponentially more efforts to get there. Right? So that's the dilemma that we are in. Either we are in the bottom 90% and we are sort of take it easy, but then you are essentially doing, you didn't make any impact. Or we reach the top 10%, but that's very, very sort of demanding. You have to be prepared to get there. So that's sort of like the kind of preparation that you have to have in mind when you decide that you want to go through such a process. And then the next thing is that, okay, so I'm willing to do that kind of preparation and I'm willing to go through it. So what exactly do I get? So that's a fair question, right? You pay the price and what do you get in return? That seems to be fair. So I'm hoping that I can sort of give you sort of somewhat unbiased view of what exactly does one get when one goes through this PhD process. Right? So the way I think of it is that really the most important thing is that after you go through a PhD process, you get to know the what and the how and the who in a specific sub-area, because you read at least 100 papers in that particular sub-area, in addition to whatever basic sort of standard papers you are supposed to read when you take courses. Right? So that means that, let's say you are in a particular area, you know what's going on in that sub-area. Like, what are people working on nowadays? And how do they do it? Like, there are two approaches to the same problem. One approach is doing this, the other approach is doing that. And who are the top guys in that particular sub-area? So you get to know their name, their style, and so on. Those are the good things, right? And it turns out that you may think that, how is this useful? Turns out to be very useful, right? In the end, we all know that whatever you did in your PhD degree, 10 years from now, those areas change. But still, those people and the kind of trade-off and the design issue are largely persist, right? So you get to know these things, and then you can reflect upon the experience that you gleaned from these papers. Those experiences tend to be very useful. And the other thing is that you get to have this engineering skill to design and implement novel system, right? Whatever security system, data center network, or wireless communication, or test automation tools, this and that, right? So you still need to have a basic engineering skill, like what are the basic approaches, what are the common open source tools that are available, how do you use them, how do you set them up, how do you piece them together into a more complete system, and so on. So including coding, hardware design, tool usage, or equipment operation. So if you are doing sort of more experimental, large-scale equipment, you require large-scale experimental equipment to do things, then you need to be familiar with that. So that's usually what you do. You read a lot of paper, and then it probably takes you like 2 to 3 years to get this part, right? So from like someone with a bachelor degree or a master degree, and then you need to have enough engineering skill to be sort of like a decent guy in that area. It probably takes you like 2 to 3 years to go through this stage. And then the next step is that once you are able to implement this novel system, and remember that this novel system, probably the algorithm and spec are coming from somebody else. You are just given a task to design and implement them. Then you need to be able to measure and analyze the performance of this system, and then devise ways to improve that. Usually we run into a lot of problems, like people come along and then they say, oh, I do this, do that, and they do it. And in the end, tell me, what's the problem? How come the performance sucks? What are the ways to improvement? And they get stuck. They don't even have a very good idea of how to measure things, right? To measure things, you have to know what are the optimization schemes that are used to boost the performance of the system. Because I know this is the way the performance is boosted, that's why I need to measure certain things to know that, oh, because the assumptions are wrong, or my implementation do not work as expected, and then I can try to improve that, right? So that's the third step. Now you get to know. Not only you can implement, you know how it works, and then put it the right way to measure them, analyze the performance problems, and then you can devise ways to improve them, right? And so that's the third step. And finally, you can put it in clear writing or in verbal communication to explain what you have done, right? Very, very complicated system. I can write it in clear writing, or I can present it in a logical fashion. Right? It's non-trivial. Most people do not have this capability. Just to stand up with a very complicated system, with sort of like a sophomore people, students, or junior students, I can explain to them how it works and so on, and they understand. This is non-trivial, and this is part of your PhD training. Right? And finally, your final test should be, you should be able to come up with a project idea, and that project idea should have excellent taste. Right? And these are after you solve problem, your advisor should give you one more test, which is come up with your own topic, okay, and see the quality of the topic that you can come up with. It will be an exercise of what you have learned in your PhD training process, right? Did you choose good problems? Those problems should have like a long lifetime and important enough, and yet they are solvable. So we don't want people to pick problems that are really difficult and nobody can solve them, and then they got stuck for 20 years. That's not what we mean. Good problems are important problems, and they are barely solvable, and so you can solve them. And then that's what we are looking for. So to me, those are the things that you get from PhD. And those are the things that are definitely not in your master degree curriculum. I would be really surprised if your master education can get you any of this. And now the questions that are this important, turns out in places like Egypt, they are extremely important, right? There are clear limitations for those who only have master degree and those who have a PhD degree. So I'm not saying that every PhD degree student eventually get all of this, but they get some subset of this. But for master students, they largely don't have any of this. Okay, and then that's a problem. It will be difficult to give them more responsibility to create a new program, to plan a particular project, this and that. They just don't have enough training to do any of that. Okay. My own experience, I went through the same process. I think I get sort of pretty good, like great experience at formulating research project and even research program, right? Research program is a set of projects that has a coherent theme, and then inside it I break it down into individual research projects, right? So in my graduate school, year, it just so turns out that my advisor doesn't do much for me. So it's basically hands-on. So I have to create things, ideas, and project idea on my own, and maybe work with my fellow graduate students and so on. Turns out to be an excellent experience. So by the time I graduate, I pretty much have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to work on and how this project should be linked together and so on. And also like give you some ability to learn things really quickly. So this is also one of the sort of valuable training in the graduate school days that give me a lot of exposure to project in different fields. And when you are involved in project in different fields, it tends to cross-pollinate. They can sort of enrich each other in some sense. And I find that it's very sharp, sort of clear contrast between when I was the first year and second year PhD student and when I graduate at the moment. So same set of papers. When I'm in first year or second year, it's really painful to read through that. I don't really know what's going on there. And it's like just difficult to read through that. But then, after I graduate, probably 5 years later, it turns out that suddenly, for whatever reason, everything seems clear to me. That, just that those ideas, they seems to be linked together, and whatever they say makes sense, all right? So I can see sort of a very clear sign of growth in that sense. Like, this is what I put on here, like exponential growth in the ability to learn new stuff, okay? This, I think, is also an important part of the PhD education, right? Down the line, maybe you are doing, I don't know, maybe you are doing security, and then maybe 10 years from now, you happen to do, I don't know, some kind of analog IC design for whatever reason. And you are supposed to have that skill to pick up the skill required to attack a new field very quickly. That capability is part of your PhD training. Okay, and then the other thing is, suddenly I also think that I suddenly become sort of better and better at the listening and paying attention to subtle details. This is, I think some of you probably have this experience. Sometimes when you have a meeting with your advisor, your fellow student is saying something, and then some other student misunderstand that fellow student, but your advisor can pick it up, saying that no, that's not what he meant. He meant this, and the subtle part is this, that's his main point, and so on. So being able to listen to what people have to say and then distinguish the fine point and subtle point, those are important characteristic of a good leader, and that's also something you get to have. And then of course, in the end, you have multiple sub-areas, you have some unique expertise. So I think that automatically comes with reading a lot of papers and involved in a lot of projects. So given that, right, I already outlined a set of skills you might have after you go through a PhD process. Now, how valuable these skills are, right? So it depends on where you end up being, right? So maybe you want to go to academia, okay? Of course, that's sort of like a generic route for people who want to get a PhD. Now, not many people know, but for most of those who already gone through it, they probably know it from day one. If you want to take an academic path, then being an assistant professor really means that you become a manager from day one, right? So you are a manager now. And this particular manager has to do a lot of things, right? You have to come up with a project idea, you have to raise funds, you have to form your own team, you have to actually develop technology, publish them, and then repeat the cycle. That's what you are supposed to do, right? You are no longer an individual. You are a team lead automatically when you become an assistant professor. And that's the responsibility you have to bear in mind, that it's no rose garden. You have to go through that process, and then you have to be responsible for your students and so on. And so PhD training is definitely required. Otherwise, you cannot go through this, right? You cannot develop technology, you cannot sell them, you cannot get money, and then you cannot support your student, then you won't have a large team, and then you cannot do much, and so on. So academia, definitely, you need those PhD training. Now, for industrial labs like E3, right? E3 is sort of like a national lab for Taiwan. So basically, you will still start with individual contributor, right? You just do your own thing. You don't have to be responsible for anybody else. But gradually, you probably become a project lead and become a technical manager, right? Now, from our experience, this is the main points I want to convey. Like, but based on what I observed in the past 5 years since I came back from the US, based on what I observed in E3, there's a distinction between PhD and master, right? So for PhD, usually, I can only say usually, not always, usually they can quickly pick up knowledge in a new sub-area. So we have people who are doing signal processing, and then now they are doing software-defined network. It's completely different, but they do it anyway. But we'll expect them like 3 to 5 months, they should be able to familiarize themselves with that area and then start being able to discuss idea and jargons and so on. And they tend to have a clearer presentation skill, right? Complicated idea, what's the level of abstraction to present, what are the important stuff, what are the not so important stuff that can be ignored and so on. They tend to have this kind of training, as opposed to master students, they tend not to have this kind of training. And then they usually are more systematic, and then when they solve a problem, they tend to be more rigorous. They can solve the problem in a sort of like a more complete, comprehensive, and cover more details and corner cases, and so on. So in industrial lab, also having a PhD degree would help you, right? Because there are indeed a key, sort of like a very discernible differences between these two types of people. Or you just want to join a product-oriented corporation, right? You get a PhD or you get a master, you just want to join some company and do your thing. So usually, it's true that especially in Taiwan, having a PhD probably doesn't buy you that much, right? Probably doesn't buy you much. So your career path, you probably go from engineer to product manager and so on. But having a PhD still helps a little bit in the sense that, especially when you want to move up, then usually, of course, like nowadays, most corporations do not just go by their academic degree, right? That's not right, right? Just do everything according to the academic degree is not the right thing to do. But still, you can clearly see that if I go into a big company and this company happen to have some collaboration relationship with academia and industrial lab, usually they send PhD out because they know if they don't send somebody with a PhD degree, usually the conversation cannot go on very long. Right? Because after we talk for a while and we say that we want to do this approach, we want to do that approach, the guys, the eyes are blank. They just don't know what you are talking about. And that's not a good thing for the company. So usually they send people with a PhD degree. They tend to be sort of more broad. They have some level of common sense in different areas and so on. Right? So even in a sort of more product-oriented corporation, having a PhD degree still help a little bit. I just cannot honestly say that it will help as much as in industrial labs or in academia, okay? But it will help, right? But of course, that PhD, getting a PhD itself cannot automatically give you some substantial benefit, all right? And it doesn't necessarily promise you a rose garden in the sense that it cannot promise you eventually you're going to become big or be in a big shot here and there. No, we cannot promise that, right? Because we all know that I'm sure there are a lot of people standing here give you like the secrets or recipe to be successful in life, right? But most of this advice probably does not include getting a PhD. Right? Getting a PhD is neither a sufficient condition nor a necessary condition for being successful in life. Right? But I think the right characterization is a push in the right direction towards success. It's just a push, give you a little bit edge. Right? You can leverage it a little bit, right? And it's towards success. That's more or less, in my mind, that's the right way to characterize. Now, we can also say that a lot of the PhD, especially in computer science, nowadays there are general consensus. There's this big bubble in computer science PhD. There are a lot of PhD, and when we examine the contents of the PhD dissertation, usually they are not that great, right? And probably they don't mean much. Nobody read them, nobody cite them, and so on, right? So it's true that there's this particular phenomenon going on. But despite that, I believe that if we go by the actual outputs of computer science PhD training, maybe the picture is not that great. But the actual contents for those people who actually go through PhD training, the actual thing those PhD students receive, I think is still worthwhile. But to me, I also think that getting a PhD is an exercise of ambition, right? So yes, you can get a PhD, join a good company, make money, do this and do that. Not too bad, good stuff, and live a pretty good